If you're watching this, you're probably curious about how someone can go from being just an average student to building an academic career. And trust me, that was me. I was average in high school, in medical school, and even during fellowship training. And fast forward to now, I'm an associate professor and a funded physician researcher. But let me tell you, I did not have a head start. I did not match into residency the first time I applied, and during fellowship I was the least efficient one and often felt out of depth compared to my peers. My fund of knowledge was poor and I had to work twice as hard just to keep up. But that's not where the story ends, but it's where it begins. In this video, I'll share how I strategically transformed my career, the lessons I learned along the way, and how you can apply them to your journey. So let's dive in. Number one, be strategic when taking opportunities. Being strategic means looking beyond the obvious path and making choices that align with your long-term goals, even if they seem unconventional. It's not just about taking the safest route or following what everyone else is doing. And at the same time, it's not about making the riskiest choice just for the thrill of it. Being strategic is about finding the path that challenges you, positions you for growth, and creates opportunities you might not have encountered otherwise. Part of this is increasing your surface area of luck. And what does that mean? The surface area of luck refers to that idea that the more you put yourself out there through learning, connecting, and also trying new things, the more chances you create for opportunities to come your way. Luck isn't just about chance, it's about preparation, visibility, and also action. And by actively seeking experiences and exposing yourself to different environments, you make it more likely that the right opportunities will find you. Let me share a few examples from my journey. After medical school, most Malaysians went to the usual path, heading to the UK, Australia, or Singapore. And it was the obvious choice for many because the routes were familiar and had clear processes. I chose a different route. I went to the US. I had no connections, no familiarity with the system, and had no head start. And this decision set me back for 4 years. I had to pass an entirely new set of exams and restart my career as an intern. In the short term, it felt like I was moving backwards, but once I got into the US system, the trajectory of my career sped up dramatically, and the opportunities were far greater. And I was on a path that aligned better with my long-term goals. Being strategic also means exposing yourself to opportunities others might overlook. During my research fellowship, for example, most fellows concentrated solely on attending academic and scientific conferences. I attended those as well, but I deliberately chose to step outside the usual path by also attending conferences on the business side of medicine. That decision was transformative because that gave me insights into leadership, project management, financial sustainability, and skills that many researchers don't prioritize but are essential for long-term career growth. More importantly, I built powerful connections with people outside my immediate academic circle, and connections that later opened a lot of doors for me. It wasn't just about learning, it was about positioning myself differently in a field where most people follow the same playbook. And another example is starting my YouTube channel. Traditional researchers often focus solely on publishing papers, but I wanted to reach a broader audience and share my knowledge authentically. And that decision opened unexpected doors. It helped me connect with people I would not have met otherwise, and also establishing myself as a thought leader. Strategic thinking is about being intentional and proactive in your decisions. And it's also about consistently putting yourself in positions where opportunities can arise and where you can grow. And so by increasing your surface area of luck, whether that's attending non-traditional conferences, trying new platforms, or choosing a less obvious career path, you're not leaving success up to chance. Instead, you're creating the conditions for it to happen. The journey might be more challenging, but the rewards are often extraordinary. Number two, get the foot in the door first. Opportunities don't always come neatly packaged or easily land on your lap. More often, you have to actively seek them out, and even then, they might not come as wide open doors. Sometimes it's just a small crack, but that's all you need to slip through and make your way in. So think of it like bacteria entering your body. It does not really need a gaping wound. A tiny cut is enough, and with the right conditions, it can thrive, grow, and even lead to a rip-roaring sepsis. And so this mindset has guided how I approach my career. For example, my Step 1 USMLE scores were not great. And for those who don't know, these are some exams to enter into the US. Because of that average score, it meant that I wasn't competitive for top-tier residency programs. And instead of waiting for the perfect opportunity, I focused on finding any entry point. So I matched into a community program and poured everything into becoming the best version of myself there. And so I worked really hard to build my skills, establish reputation, and also form meaningful connections. Then I took another step forward by applying for a rotation at one of the top nephrology programs at University of Pennsylvania. These elective rotations are often really brief, just 2 weeks, and many people just dismiss them as being too short to make a real impact. But I saw it as a chance to immerse myself and to learn from the best and connect with fellows and attendings. And so by the end of the rotation, I had earned a strong letter of recommendation that would later help me secure a fellowship at University of Pennsylvania. And traditionally, when I compared my CV with my co-fellows, I did not have the same pedigree to get into an Ivy League program, but I found that small opening and wedged myself in and proved my worth. This led to not only a fellowship, but also the opportunity to complete my master's degree there. And so getting your foot in the door isn't about waiting for the ideal moment or opportunity, it's about identifying even the smallest openings and taking action. And once you're in, you know you have the chance to grow, prove yourself, and also climb higher. Number 3. Punch above my weight. This is a boxing term. It means competing in a weight class above your own. And in career terms, it's about going for opportunities you might not yet be fully qualified for. Why is that? Because the process itself is incredibly valuable, even if you don't succeed right away. When I apply for things I'm not ready for, I never see it as a waste of time. In fact, I gain something invaluable: feedback. And not the sugar-coated kind you get during casual reviews or during Feedback Fridays. When you're rejected, you often receive raw, unfiltered feedback because that highlights exactly where you fall short. And this is the feedback you can use to grow. For example, when I applied for my research grants early in my career, I was not selected. But through the process, I learned what decision makers were looking for, how to better structure my proposals, and where I needed to improve. And that feedback became a blueprint for my future applications. And over time, it helped me secure the grants I needed to grow my research career. Another example is my experience applying for committees and boards. And these positions usually have criteria that seem far beyond my reach, whether it's years of experience, a specific skill set, or prior leadership roles. And I knew I wasn't the strongest candidate, but usually I applied anyway. Sometimes I don't make it, but each application taught me something new. So I got a clearer picture of what these organizations valued, and I improved how I presented my experience, and more importantly, I met decision makers and started building connections. And here's the thing, sometimes you may get lucky. Maybe the organization is short-staffed or they're willing to take a chance on someone enthusiastic and eager to learn. And other times, your fresh perspective might be exactly what they're looking for. So I remember one example where my enthusiasm and vision caught the attention of the board, and despite not checking all the boxes, I was selected. So each application is a step forward, even if it does not lead to success immediately. And over time, this mindset of punching above your weight will help you grow into the roles you aspire to. Number 4, learn the rules of the game. Every system has its rules, and success often depends on understanding both the written and unwritten ones. Take academic promotion, for example. On the surface, the process seems straightforward. Publish papers, teach, and also take on leadership roles. But the unwritten rules, the ones nobody explicitly tells you, that can make all the difference. For example, who reviews your promotion packet? What kind of publications carry the most weight? How many publications do you need? What counts as national reputation? Similarly, for research grants, it's not just about having a great idea. You need to understand how grants are reviewed, what differentiates a winning application from a losing one, and what specific criteria reviewers are scoring on. And the more you learn about the rules, both explicit and implicit, the better you can navigate the system. And this isn't just about gaming the system, it's about working smarter by knowing how things actually work. Number 5, know what skills to learn. So there are 2 approaches when we talk about learning. So the first group of skills you're thinking about are meta skills. Meta skills are higher order skills that enable you to learn and apply other skills more effectively. So they're like the multipliers. And once you master them, they elevate everything else you do. So take for communication as an example. Learning how to write a research paper is a specific skill, but learning how to communicate persuasively is a meta skill. Communicating persuasively applies across all contexts: academic writing, public speaking, presentations, and even writing scripts for a YouTube channel. And communication isn't just about sharing ideas, it's about doing so in a way that influences, inspires, and drives action. Another example of a meta skill is emotional intelligence. That includes reading people and situations, know when to speak up, when to listen, how to phrase things to get the best outcomes. Whether you're leading a team, negotiating a collaboration, or teaching, emotional intelligence allows you to adapt and respond in ways that strengthen relationships and achieve goals. By focusing on meta skills, you're not just learning how to do one thing, you're creating a foundation for mastering a wide range of skills that will compound over time. Now, the second group is specific skills. Here, it's not enough to just learn the fundamental skills. There's something called skill stacking. Skill stacking is about building layers of expertise that make you unique. It's not just about being good at one thing, it's about combining complementary skills to create a niche that sets you apart. So, I started with my core skills, things that are essential in my field like study design, data analysis, and critical appraisal. And these are the basics that every researcher needs to know. But once I've had that foundation, I began to layer on additional skills. For example, I learned video production and how to speak on camera to create a YouTube channel. This skill not only helps me share my knowledge with a broader audience, but also differentiates me as a researcher who can engage with the public in a way many of my peers don't. Another layer I added was understanding the business side of medicine and research. I learned about project management, financial sustainability, and leadership. These skills are not traditionally taught to researchers, but they've really helped me in leading projects, secure fundings, and navigate the complexities of academia and healthcare systems. Skill stacking is about being intentional. First, you build a strong foundation with core skills, then you add layers of complementary skills that amplify your value and make you stand out in your field. And now, how do you put it together? Meta skills and skill stacking work hand in hand. Meta skills provide the framework for learning and adapting, while skill stacking helps you focus on building expertise that aligns with your goals. By being deliberate about the skills you choose to develop, you can create a unique combination that sets you apart and propels you forward. Number 6, train with weights. Imagine training to run with your friends. At first, you're all at the same level, running at a comfortable pace, and then you add ankle weights, wrist weights, or even a weighted vest. Suddenly, you're so much slower, you have to struggle to keep up. And over time, though, you will adapt to the extra weight. Your strength builds, and eventually, you're running just as fast as your friends, even with the weights on. And now imagine it's race day, you take the weights off, and you're not just keeping up anymore, you're breezing past everyone. And that's how I approach my career. I always train with weights on. And sometimes I choose to add those weights myself, and other times life just throws these weights at me. And either way, I embrace the challenge because I know it will make me stronger in the long run. So let's talk about the different types of weights. So one is weights that come through life. One of the most challenging quote-unquote weights I carried was being a parent during my medical training. So I had my first child during my intern year. For those who don't know, internship is the most demanding, time-consuming, exhausting year of residency. And just before starting my fellowship, I had my second child. And even during fellowship training, that's the time when you're expected to specialize and ramp up your productivity in both clinical work and research. And many people thought I was crazy. And in truth, my productivity really plummeted. I was slower than my peers. I struggled to keep up with the demands of work and parenting. But over time, I adapted. I learned how to manage my time, prioritize tasks, and really get more done in less time. And now that my kids are older and in school now, those weights came off and my productivity skyrocketed. What felt impossible during those years of juggling was actually preparing me to be more efficient and resilient. Another example was a professional weight. So that was doing research without protected time. So for this, I trained myself to do research without the luxury of protected time. And early in my career, I did not have designated time to focus on research, and I had to fit it into evenings, weekends, any of the little time I could find. Then I learned to create even more constraints. I told myself I will only do research or clinical work during regular work hours. And in that time, it felt like an impossible weight to carry, but this forced me to become extremely efficient and found different ways to do things. I learned how to focus deeply, remove distractions, and also maximize every minute of work time. Those years of working under constraints had sharpened my skills to a level where I could now accomplish far more than I ever thought possible. Now the question is, why train with weights? The principle of training with weights isn't just about surviving tough circumstances, it's about thriving because of them. And here's why this mindset is so powerful. First is adaptability. When you're used to operating under challenging conditions, you become more adaptable. If life throws an unexpected challenge at you, you're already equipped to handle them. Number two, it makes you more efficient. Carrying extra weight forces you to find ways to optimize, and you learn to work smarter and not harder. Third is resilience. Once the weight comes off, whether it's a tough schedule, limited resources, or personal challenges, you're stronger and more capable than you were before. And then four, you change your perspective. Training with weights teaches you to appreciate your progress. You learn to value growth over comfort and see challenges as opportunities to improve. So you're feeling weighed down by circumstances. Remember this, those weights might just be the thing that makes you faster and stronger when it truly matters. Number 7, set big standards. Your standards define what you tolerate and ultimately who you become. They shape the choices you make, the habits you build, and the life you create. If you're okay with a messy room, you'll never see it as a problem. If you're okay with being overweight, eating fast food won't feel like an issue. What you perceive as a problem and what you choose to tolerate will determine the actions you take and the life you lead. And when your standards are low, you'll settle. If your standard is to coast through your job, you keep doing the bare minimum because it feels acceptable. But when you raise your standards, you align your actions with the identity you want to build. So here's how I've raised my standard in 3 key areas: health, relationships, and career. First area, health. I identify myself as a fit and healthy person, and that identity drives my choices. My standard is to prioritize my physical and mental well-being. And this means exercising consistently, eating nourishing meals, and also minimizing processed food. It's not just about looking good or avoiding illnesses, it's about having the energy and resilience to handle the demands of life. And when my health is strong, I'm more productive, focused, and present in everything I do. For example, I built a routine around exercise, treating it as a non-negotiable part of my day. It's not something I squeeze in when I have the time, it's a priority. And when you raise your standards for health, you start seeing choices like skipping exercise or eating junk food as falling below your identity you've set for yourself. And the other area or aspect of my life is relationships. I want to have a close, meaningful relationship with my kids, not just while they're young, but even as they grow into adults. That's my standard. And so to achieve this, I make a one-on-one time with them as a priority. One thing that I've started doing is to do one-on-one dates with each individual child. I'll have a date with my son, and then my husband will bring my daughter as a double date, and they can choose whatever activity they prefer. And when I prioritize the relationship, the people around me feel more valued, and those connections deepen over time. And the third area, career. In my career, I identify as someone who constantly pushes boundaries. And my standard is to take on projects that challenge me and force me to be out of my comfort zone. If a project feels too easy or routine, it's not meeting my standard. For example, every project I take on must have a learning opportunity, whether it's mastering a new research method, exploring a different area of medicine, or starting something else completely outside of my usual expertise. I want to grow with every step. And so this mindset has led me to try things like creating a YouTube channel, presenting at conferences, and taking leadership roles I initially felt unqualified for. And when your standard is to push the boundaries, you're constantly expanding what you're capable of. And you don't settle for the status quo because you're always looking for the next opportunity to grow. And finally, why raising your standards matters. Raising standards isn't just about being perfect, it's about striving for consistency in the areas that matter the most to you. And over time, these standards become second nature, and the life you have envisioned has become your reality. So ask yourself today, what are you tolerating today that's holding you back? And what standards in your life that you need to raise to become the person you truly want to be? Number 8, be early to things. I used to be the kind of person who was always late. I'll tell myself, oh, everybody's gonna be late anyway, or I would not factor in realistic travel time. For example, I don't think about the parking or traffic or walking. And because of that, I'm always stressed and always apologizing for being late. Then I met my husband. He's the complete opposite, always on time and sometimes even early. At first, I thought he was just being overly cautious. I'd be like, why be leaving so early? But no matter the situation, even when we're juggling 2 toddlers, we will arrive 5 minutes early, usually calm, stress-free. And over time, I realized he was onto something. Being early didn't just make the day run smoother, it shifted my entire mindset. And now being early is a habit I built into my life. If I have to give a lecture, I make sure to leave early with plenty of time to account for the unexpected, like traffic jams, parking delays, or any tech issues at the venue. Arriving early gives me time to set up, troubleshoot, and also get into the right headspace to deliver a great presentation. When I go to my martial arts class, I'm also early. I want time to park, warm up, wrap my hands properly, and this ritual makes sure that I'm physically and mentally ready to train. For meetings, it's the same. I arrive early, pull up my notes, prepare my questions. And I've also noticed that being early to meetings shows people that you respect their time, and in turn, they respect yours. At first, this might sound like a small habit, but it's so much more than that. It's both a physical practice and a mindset shift. And here's why it's so powerful. The first is there's less stress and less cortisol. Life is already stressful enough. Why add more pressure by rushing around? And when you're early, you give yourself the buffer, you're calm, you're collected, and you're also ready to handle the day without the unnecessary spikes in stress hormone. Number two, better time management. Being early helps you develop a much sharper sense of time management. You learn to estimate time more accurately, and you're going to include all the little things you seem to overlook. And over time, this habit builds a mindset where you naturally account for all the hidden tasks that can derail your plans if left unaccounted for. And this habit transforms how I approach bigger projects. Before you can even recruit a patient, that's a shadow work, the tasks that nobody talks about but are absolutely essential. You need to print out consent forms, you need to prepare pamphlets, draft a script for patient conversations, you have to double check all the IRB approvals. By training yourself to be early, you're also training your brain to think about the steps before the steps. All the prep works that ensures everything runs smoothly. And this habit saves you time in the long run and helps you avoid this last minute chaos. And how you do something is how you do everything. Being early to small things in life creates this ripple effect. It's a keystone habit, meaning that it influences everything else. If you're early to a meeting or class, you're likely going to be early in other areas of your life. For example, like preparing for big career opportunities, building skills ahead of time, or even spotting trends before others do. It's not just about punctuality, it's about always being prepared. Another thing, you command respect by giving respect. You respect other people's time shows professionalism and courtesy. And when you make an effort to be early, people notice. It sets the tone for how others treat you. You create the standard. Let me give you a story. When I give lectures to the fellows, I always start on time. And because I always start on time, they show up on time. Over time, this builds trust and credibility in both personal and professional relationships. Okay, number 9, be extra. People who have extraordinary careers do things that are extra, which means outside of ordinary. Being average or normal is two of my least favorite words. So for example, I'm extra by training more during martial arts, both putting out YouTube content while being a full-time physician researcher. When I first started YouTube and started coaching, I had other physicians taking shots at me, both from people who did not know me and also from people I know and respect. In truth, my feelings were really hurt at that time. Then I realized that they did not know my life vision or mission, and it's actually not their responsibility to care. It is just a projection of their own views and standards. And I also learned that there were many more who were happy for me and supportive for me. So I decided not to play small and not to dim my light and not to shrink myself to make people feel comfortable. Number 10, always go back to the fundamentals. When I was struggling to improve, it's often a sign that my foundation is shaky. And in those moments, the best thing I can do is to step back and to rebuild the basics instead of pushing forwards with advanced concepts. During my training, I often hear advice like, oh, read more research articles, you need to keep up with the literature. At face value, it's great advice, only if you already have a strong foundation. But usually that's where the problem lies. This advice is meant for people who already have a solid clinical knowledge and also the ability to critically appraise research paper. And so keeping up with the literature is about fine-tuning your understanding and learning the nuances. And for me, especially when I first started, who was really an average student in medical school, that advice was not helpful. My clinical foundation was not strong enough to absorb the nuances in the literature. For example, as a faculty member, when fellows ask me detailed questions about patient cases, I often stumble. It wasn't because I wasn't working hard, it was because my medical knowledge was shaky. So when I realized that, I stopped focusing on research papers. Instead, I went back to the basics, textbooks and review papers. I revisited the fundamentals of pathophysiology and also treatment guidelines. And guess what? Once my foundation was solid, the research papers started to make a lot more sense. And I could finally appreciate the nuances they offered instead of just feeling overwhelmed. The same thing happened with academic writing. My early drafts were a mess, full of grammatical errors, awkward phrasings, and also poor structure. And so to give you some context, Mandarin is my first language, and in Mandarin it does not have articles like a, an, or the. And so my writing just did not include them. And my mentor would go through my drafts and add articles before almost every noun. And don't even get me started on my tenses, they were all over the place. So at first it was really frustrating, but instead of letting it get to me, I went to basics. So I went on YouTube and relearned English grammar, punctuation, sentence structure, and also tense. And slowly things started to click. And once I had that foundation, my writing improved rapidly. Even though at that time I felt like, oh, I'm going back to elementary school to learn something so basic, it was really important to take the time to build the proper base. And it does not really matter what stage of your career you're in, if you're not improving as fast as you like, it's worth revisiting the fundamentals. Whether it's medicine, writing, or any other skill, a shaky foundation will limit your growth. Remember, going back to basics is not a step backward, it's a strategic move forward. So these are the principles that helped me transform my career from being an average student to becoming a funded physician researcher. So it was not an overnight journey, and there were plenty of setbacks along the way, but being strategic, consistent, and also intentional about my growth, I was able to achieve what once felt was impossible. And the best part, these principles aren't unique to me, they're universal. And no matter where you're starting from, you can apply them to your own life and career. The journey might not always be easy, but trust me, it will be worth it. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.